Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the invite. Sorry, I didn't have the best voice at the moment, but I've got 30 minutes, so I will try to be hopefully concise and precise. Sharing with you, this is not my personal belief, so this is quite important. I will share with you what we found in the document itself, a mix between practice, policy, and academia. Just to bear in mind, 20 minutes neighbourhood in Scotland is a legislation. It's part of the national planning framework number 4. So all local authorities by the law has to deliver the 20 minutes neighbourhood. I did have a very good discussion with Robert, and he was concerned I shouldn't use that concept that much in case I might receive this threat. And to start with, he might be joking, but then I believe, it is something very serious down in England. But we will talk about this. I will back any issues. I may raise a lot of questions, not necessarily in answers. The work itself wouldn't have been possible without really the real support by, let me just make the system work. Yeah. Without really the involvement of those organizations, actually you could say over the last 6-7 years, I've been collaborating with them. So although we did that a year ago, but also it is on the back of an established civic urban/rural laboratory we did in Dundee with different local authorities, including the work as well with Stephen Proctor with Cambridge University, the 5th year architecture students in urban design. So some of the lessons will be as well shared with all of you. Now, here we go. Where do we belong now when everything's in the move? As we discussed in the morning, we are in the midst of systematic crisis and actually business as usual approach. In politics, lifestyle, cost of living, climate crisis, health inequality, cost of living. The problem with all those macro trends, I call them, they will really influence policies and its operations and implementation on the ground. So that's the danger. That those macro trends will affect what happened on the ground and basically will affect the places and people. And to me, this is quite important statement. The future now, if you think about it, post-COVID, but equally post the war with Ukraine, the future is not what it used to be. And as Matthew said, I don't think there will be a return to the old norm. Actually, we are in a new norm, like it or not. And why neighborhood matter most? I really like this statement by David Sim. He said, a neighborhood is a state of being in a relationship. That's what exactly the COVID and post-COVID show the relationship between people and the planet, or people and the place, and people and people themselves. And 3 things emerged. And actually, I noticed a lot of Scandinavian countries. I've got to be careful. Robert said to me, don't say anything about Europe. Because the soon you said Europe, people will say, oh, we are not EU. 3 things are important. Being neighbors. What does it mean to be a neighbor? And actually, the building blocks has a big role to play in terms of living locally, especially in a very urbanized world, or to live in a low carbon lifestyle. And this hybrid work to me demonstrate the need where possible to live locally, if possible. The second one, the time of our life. Where do we spend our time now? Especially this idea actually becoming so important. The movement and accessibility, which is the getting about and getting on in a very segregated world, in a very congested world. Where do you spend our time? In towns, in cities, being able to work more flexibly. The power if being nearness, this idea, people start to appreciate being near, close to a green park, or to services or facilities, but equally people start to appreciate we need more calm or slow environment. This idea of sense of community. The third one to me, layering life, which is how do we live with nature and with the weather? Climate change is a reality, like it or not. There is now this tendency, can we bring nature more into cities and towns? Nature, not the green, by the way. I notice now in Copenhagen, they bring forests into the city. I found that's quite an interesting, rather than looking at the green as a burden, like the local authorities do. No. Green and investing in nature and forest is part of values, part of the social and economic values of our cities and neighborhoods. So the neighborhoods to me is not a place, it is a state of mind. It is really a state of mind where social interaction and social value is at the heart of it. I am not a text-based person, but I will show some important findings because economy, unfortunately, like it or not, is part of it. For a lot of people, especially now with the current crisis, place doesn't matter most at all. We look at place sometimes from only infrastructure or housing numbers, but we ignore most of the time, ignore the diversity, the inclusivity, the affordability, and also what options this place might give. We look at, we always house builders in these countries are market takers rather than market makers, creating new opportunities. And we always think planning with design control is bad. The primary development goals now, if you look at it, is often to build houses rather than create communities with facilities and services. House builders in this country, they have no single interest in really investing in facilities and services. All what they do most of the time is really deliver houses. The second one, many large housing developers are mainly accessible and only by car and provide limited opportunity for using other mode of transportation that may lower the greenhouse gas emission to support maybe even public health through active travel. This is an interesting observation as well. Where attempts have been made to provide good buses or local facilities, they only become viable and often introduced after substantial portion of the housing development has been occupied. But the problem with that, by that time, after 3 or 4 or 5 years, the residents have developed their own car culture-based living, which is only relying on reaching destination away from the settlement. Once you build the development around car, this is a direct invite for people to own a car. Condition, and another thing, condition underpinning development may prove hard to change because they are embedded as they are in the mindset. That's another issue in the institutional investors and major developers who are only concentrated on producing most of the time single-use development, very monofunctional, targeting always family houses. And also, the development we established in the UK over the last 50 years is really rely heavily on what we call it risk and reward. So, and that's concept being buried in the banking, in the mortgage, in the public sector's recruitment, and even construction industry. And the last one is the interesting one, back to what Matthew said, the value of places. The markets have really become detached from people fundamentally value about a place. What we perceive from the place is so different from how the market see it. So there is disconnect between the market and the place values. Let me move into what contributes CO2 emissions in UK cities. Imagine those two to me. The transport contribute to nearly 26% to CO2 emissions in the UK, mainly coming from the road, and around 23% from energy supply. How do we commute in Greater Britain? This is quite an interesting statistics by UK government. As you can see, the average beyond London, for those who travel by car is around 70 to 80%. Interestingly, London is only 27%. To me, those as well quite important statistics to read. 20% of our journey is under 1 mile made by car or a van. Around 40%, 2 miles made by car. Imagine if we concentrate on those two in terms of walkability and cycling. What happened to the CO2 level in the whole country and emissions, plus the impact on our health and well-being? So what is now the big idea? When we do a new neighborhood or a new extension infill, does it connect to destination? That's what exactly the models we evolved over the last 40, 50 years. In the UK, there are 10 or 12 templates. That's what the house builders, they use, 10 templates. It's all concentrated on this concept. All about segregations, isolations, distance from facilities and services, plus low critical mass of people and low critical mass of houses. This is all from England, those. Now, housing by itself, my colleagues, does not make neighborhoods. And see what my frustration with this kind of pictures. Can anybody tell me what is that in it? What kind of a green is that? This is to me a leftover green space. That's not a green park. Otherwise, how on earth you can reach that green park? 40% of this system you see is to do with roads and parking. And 10% is pavement. And those pavement most of the time is parking for driving. And this is what the engineer taught us to do when it's come to structures like a street become a tree-like street network. But we know quite well that's lead to more isolation, no permeability, no connectivity. That's exactly the conventional suburban models we have. And this is exactly, by the way, how the private sector thinks. They put first of all the roads, and then the houses come later. And we assume this is to do with the privacy. By the way, it has nothing to do with the privacy. Am I right, Robert? What is it to do with what? The 20 meter. Where the 20 meter come from? Thank you. This has nothing to do with privacy. It is to do with accommodating the sunlight. That's what they assume. And it is as well accommodating car and accessibility by big lorries. And this is exactly what we deliver. You see these pictures more or less everywhere in the UK. So and I really like this quote by Jane Jacobs. She created what we deliver, unsuccessful neighborhood, because it is a place that's overwhelmed already by its defects and problems and is progressively more helpless. Before them, they create what we call it unhealthy challenges, unstable. It really becomes an unstable place because it doesn't have any investment, any opportunities, not able to change. Actually making changes in existing neighborhood become an issue. That's, by the way, another challenge. What do we do with the existing one we did? What kind of retrofitting we need? Where the money come from? And actually it become even unsuitable because it is catering for one types of families. And this is to me quite interesting. The configuration of urban structure will really determine how connected or disconnected or how permeable or impermeable our built environment. If you look at this little figure, that's what used to be the UK urban structure. It was based on what I call it the block concept. The block meet the street, and the block is a series of a plot. Over time and over here, that's what we end up. That's exactly what we do. We really ignore this kind of very sophisticated urban structure, which is all to do with proximity and diversity and harmony. That's what happened to the built environment, which create disconnections. So we really need to start revisiting the urban structure, which should support and help more density, better density, gentle density, proximity, and diversity. And the system isn't broken. It was built this way. And the next one, the people who think the system works, work for the system. This is an interesting study by Jan Gale. Apologies, I don't have a lot of time to unpack it. But one thing he tried to demonstrate how much money go per capita for suburban houses we deliver, comparing with the one live in the city. The cost of infrastructure to build suburban houses or those houses at the edge and beyond, from Scandinavian perspective. And how many people we used to have and how many people we have now. By the way, the average household size in England, 2.5 people. In Scotland, 2.14. And to me, you might say, why, Husam, are you saying this? If you don't have enough critical mass of people, you cannot justify having a single bus stop or an ATM machine. They have to work both ways. And here we go. What is the way forward? To me, it's not about the new houses we build. How about the existing one? And who is responsible for the retrofitting? Where the costs come from? And can we retrofit it, actually? That's the problem with these kind of houses. Is not subject to change at all. Is really not subject to change. And there will be legal challenges beyond architecture and planning if we have to attempt to retrofit that. This is quite an interesting slide. In the UK at the moment, this is the UK versus the rest of Europe, if you allow me to say. We have tendency to put a lot of money and resources in our city center. And we assume always, if the center flourish, the rest of the city or the rest of the town will flourish. And that's to some extent is true, by the way. But the danger with that, the center become busy, expensive. People have no choice. They go to the edge of the city and beyond, as we can see now in Cambridge and beyond, actually. And Oxford and beyond, and Edinburgh and beyond. Okay? And that's, by the way, encourages sprawl. Why? Because once you have a distance demand transport. And the transport most of the time comes by car. And when you demand more transport, you have to build more infrastructure. That's mean more land take, and that's mean more pollution. In some European cities now, no, they adopted a different policy. They said, no, our cities should be a cities of connected, vibrant neighborhoods. We shouldn't put all the money and resources in one spot. Let us have a distinctive city center, but the city should be a collection of connected, vibrant neighborhoods, creating different economic opportunity, and the city itself becoming short distances, more convenient proximity, but also city should be a city of vibrant neighborhoods. That's exactly what you might tell me. Do you have an evidence for this? I would urge you to look at Leipzig and city of Freiburg, those two cities. And this is, to me, is really start bridging the gap between living and working, living and playing. This is what exactly the Scottish government tried to advocate. We really need to start rethinking this relationship, the broken relationship between homes, family cares, schools, and where they work. Can we bring that chain? And can we bring this relationship? This is as well another good example, the mayor of Utrecht city in Netherlands. This is his vision for 2040. He knows quite well the way forward is to really have mobility hub and concentrate. The city should be a collection of mobility hubs, focusing on neighborhood level, higher density, where reliable, frequent, affordable transportation is the way forward. That's exactly their vision. That's their neighborhood. It becomes a connected environment and inclusivity as the heart of it. That's another interesting one as well. Can we see the neighborhood as an ecological habitat? Can we live with the weather? Can we live with nature as a way not only to tackle climate change, but equally as well to have that good relationship between people and nature, moving away from this separated private homes into more active community by looking at the density, rethinking density, reduction in land use. Really, reduction in land use now become a big thing in Copenhagen, but also increasing. Now, I did have a debate with my colleagues in the UK. People are reluctant to this one for one reason, the privacy. Here in the UK, we like to define the spaces between private, public, semi-private, semi-public. I noticed in Scandinavian countries that concept become a little bit loose and become accepted. So there is an issue here to do with what is public realm, what is private garden, and so on. So the concept you use will shape how we think, how we plan, how we design, and how we actually act and behave. Hence the 20 minutes neighborhood. My colleagues, please, 20 minutes neighborhood is not about cycling or walkability per se. It's not about having a war against car. It's not about controlling people's freedom and movement. That's really quite crucial for the public perspective. It's not about being in a cage. Actually, 20 Minutes Neighborhood could be about creating more opportunities. It's about diversifying the system. It's about reducing as much as we can our aggregate carbon dioxide, but it's not about limiting your movement and movability. That's really so crucial. The concept, unfortunately, being hijacked by low traffic engineer, by low traffic neighborhood concept, by low emission zones in London and elsewhere. Really the concept being hijacked. And I do question whether it is being explained well to the public. But it's not only about cycling or walkability. In fact, it is about a place. And it is about supporting more locally to deliver low carbon lifestyle. It is about sense of community, as Matthew explained earlier. It is about affordability. That's exactly what the 20 Minutes Neighborhood means. The mixing is important, the right density, the proximity to public transportation, cycling, walkability, inclusivity, but equally, this is quite important. The interrelationship with the surrounding is quite important because not everything will be accessible within the 10 minutes or 20 or even beyond. So this is exactly what the document tried to show. What is the desired outcomes? And we notice this is exactly what the desired outcomes. This is to me quite important. If you don't bring the community on board, I do question the authenticity of the concept itself. The community as well bringing them on board to support their behavior and create cultural change and behavior in their patterns and the way they use the neighborhood is at the heart of it. So it is not a top-down policy, I am afraid. And at the heart of it, if you read actually what it's trying to show us, three things to me: diversifying the system. By the way, diversifying what you offer will diversify who live in the place. A lot of good places I visited in the UK, diversity is key. When you diversify the system, you diversify who come to live in it. Inclusivity at the heart of it. It's not catering for one specific people, but also equity. And this is that when we discuss the outcomes, okay, what is the means for the delivery? So we have two debates: the aspirational outcomes versus the means of delivery in country like the UK. And I will say something about it. Why there is conspiracy theory about it. People think it is a liberty restricting measure. And there is opposition come from the fear that 20 minutes will deprioritize the use of motor vehicles. In fact, it is about prioritize inclusivity and improving safety for people put at risk by pavement parking, speeding, pollution, rather than being against motorists or freedom of movement per se. To me, let us not get stuck around, is it 10 or is it 15 or 20? I think one of my colleagues will speak about this idea of a multi-time neighborhood, because every neighborhood is different. So let us not really, it isn't to me, it's a new way of living. It's a new way of thinking. It's about making localism a reality on the ground. It's about how we enjoy living well locally rather than getting stuck. Is it 10? Is it 20? Time doesn't matter actually sometimes. But what is important to know, 20 Minutes Neighborhood is not a time limited task that create a finish in the product. Place keep evolving. By the way, to create a neighborhood, it may take 1 or 2 generations. Really, to create a neighborhood and a community, it may take 1 or 2, sometimes 3 generations. So neighborhood must evolve from year to year, from generation to generation. So they need and care and maintenance. And this is to me quite important. The jigsaw and how to bring those different pieces together, which really represent the inclusivity, the transport, destination and services. That's really at the heart of it. And that's so important if we are serious about it. Yes, something I am pleased about. This is our national plan framework in Scotland. For the first time ever, you see a policy in a country like Scotland where they make it very clear we need to have more compact growth. We need to have a more clear focus on densification to reduce urban sprawl, to protect natural features, and promote local livability. However, the obstacles with that, I'm just very worried, as usual. This idea, ding dong thinking. Oh yes, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Oh no, it is associated with conspiracy theory. It is toxic subject. It creates isolated places. It's war against car and freedom. But equally, it has a hope as well in terms of low carbon society and communities, better quality of life, fairer and inclusive environment, and living with weather and nature. The second one, the fragmented thinking, that's what worries me. A lot of people think it is a technical exercise, or you look at the place only from two-dimensional, like GIS or so, rather than a place as a whole. But also the fragmented thinking comes from, it's becoming as well extra burden on some people because they feel it is a wicked problem. And also there are two things. Who is responsible for delivering the concept and where the resources come from? And what worries me, with this debate over debate, people lost trust with what we do, with what we try to deliver, and they create what I call it community fatigue. Because there is a question now, who is in charge, what kind of mindset, what kind of professions, and what approach? And the problem, the planning really tends to prioritize mobility over accessibility. And it is about people movement over traffic. That's what should be, and that's what should be priority number one. And here we go, it's really our choice. If you look at the picture here, how on earth do you want this place to be a 20 minutes neighborhood? Sorry, seriously, how on earth do you want this to be 20 minutes? Can anybody tell me how? It's all about isolation, it's all about monofunctional. And a lot of research show when you have this kind of compact growth, which is based on the concept of block and blot and proximity and higher density, then this place could function as a 20 minutes neighborhood, because most of the time it has the right mixing. It has the critical mass to support the 20 minutes neighborhood. So we need to plan for mixing of activities, food, transport choices. So that's diversity is really at the heart of what we should deliver. Green, I really insist to put this one. There is now really shift in thinking, moving from gray planning into more nature and green planning. Green and investing in green, as Matthew said, people now have desire now in the UK and beyond that. They want accessibility to a green park within the first 5 minutes. That's why the way more or less is 300 meters. But the importance, how do we make the green visible? How do you make it usable? And how do you make it accessible? Hence now, some EU cities, they adopted this concept. I know this is maybe very utopian, but I really like this idea of 300. In some cities now, like Ljubljana, every citizen must have access to to 3 trees from their window. Every neighborhood should cover by 30% of the neighborhood should be covered by trees, and every single citizen should have access to a green park within the first 5 minutes, which is 300 meters. So can we think about neighborhoods as an ecological habitat? So we really live with nature and with the green, rather than thinking about the green as a burden on us. Another thing, I really like this quote by Yang. People do not change their behavior when you tell them to. People change their behavior when the context combine them to. When you have a relevant, reliable infrastructure which support walking and cyclability and experience, people will change their behavior. And I do have a lot of evidence to see. And I want to say, people quickly adopt their travel behavior and patterns to suit the context of the street layouts and infrastructure they encounter. The second one, which is really cool to me, quality matter most. Quality matter most. The journey and the destination and amenity, as well as proximity. There is no point living next to a public space or a public park if it is unsafe, dirty, or promote antisocial behavior. There is no point living next to a health center if you cannot get a GP appointment. And there is no point living next to a bus stop if the service stops at 6 p.m. in the evening. Convenience matters most. We need to create the convenience environment which support local living. Experience matters most. It's not about just the existing stuff and the provision of stuff. The experience you create is really at the heart of it. Why winning public support is vital for the 20 minutes neighborhood. Sorry, I have to say this slide quite clearly, especially in deprived neighborhoods in the UK. People can usually support pursuing active travel as part of healthy living, but reducing car journey may be a step too far. Owning a car provides not only a significant mobilities and economic opportunities for a lot, but also a strong sense of identity and culture and self-worth. The prospect of reducing opportunity for using a car may really raise a real concerns. Hence, you see people now against the concept, especially in Oxford and beyond. To win acceptance by public, policymakers, architects, planners must really present a compelling and feasible strategy that can convincingly demonstrate how the 20 minutes neighborhood will yield more maybe freedom or maybe economic opportunity, prosperity, and maybe improved quality of life. Of course, there is a lot of benefits of 20 minutes neighborhood. I would urge you to look at this fantastic document by the NHS Health England, showing clearly what the impact of walkability and physical activities on our health. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I would urge you to look at it. It is in the document. And here we go. That's my questions to you. Can anybody tell me how the 20 minutes neighborhood will work with this type of configuration? That's exactly what we keep delivering. And we assume this will give us a better result, by the way. That's another interesting one as well, by surprise. If I am planning to have a new housing extension here or there in no set spot, can anybody tell me how connectivity and permeability with structure like this? That's what I call it the impossible 20 minutes neighborhood. That's really rather impossible. Is there any economic case? Absolutely. You need to have a high street and economic case for 20 minutes neighborhood. And as the Welsh government adopted a concept of what we call it the foundational economy. The Welsh government now pushing for what they call it the foundational economy. They want more local economy on the ground to benefit people at different stages, which is, as Robert and I always discuss, can we create what we call it circular economy? Circulate the economy locally for visitors, for residents, is really at the heart of it. And that's what should be the 20 minutes neighborhood. And yes, we have seen post-COVID now, there is tendency now, especially now with the new development, mixing of the concept of mixed use has evolved. This idea of bringing health, wellness, education, residential, working become together, like the community hubs we saw early in the morning to do. That's what I call it the new connected blinded use, or this idea of promoting local trends by local people, especially food productions and so forth. And this is another one just to show you the economic vitality and viability is key for the 20 minutes to a neighborhood to work. To open one single shop in a neighborhood, you need around 1,500 people. 1,500 people. Bear in mind, single shop, they have to charge more just for business to work. And the problem, even sometimes if you have a shop next to your homesteads, that doesn't mean you will shop there. Why? It's your choice, and affordability will have a big role to play. Imagine to open a health center with 4 GPs, you need 10,000 people. And by the way, those numbers keep changing, especially with the current inflation and so forth. Density, another interesting subject. And I have a lot of interesting debate about it. Density, my colleagues, please. It is an outcome, not a determinant. It's about creating better places from density. Who cares if it is 40 or 60 and 70 and the place doesn't make any sense? This is a tower, by the way. This is a land with a tower for 75 units. No engagement, no street. Actually, even the green is useless. Very parking oriented. This is another one by maybe typical house volume, interestingly, without cul-de-sacs at least. All private garden, all looks the same concept, very car oriented, 75. This is wow. This is when it is based on the block, and the block is a series of plots, and the block may create a street and share garden. With some, of course, with some parking here and there. This is 75 and this is 75. So it's about how we make most of the space. That's what they call it in Scandinavian terms, the gentle density, medium-sized density. And I would really urge, that's what we need to transform in the UK. In the UK, the typical house builders, in England, they do 20 to 25 per hectare. 20 to 25, wow. So you build houses for 45 people and they occupy 1 hectare. That's a lot, by the way. Scandinavian countries, they are moving towards 30 to 60. Of course, London is a special place. I know in London they do now 60 and even beyond. Okay, because the land value is expensive and they are allowed to go a bit higher. And that's let me show you this good example of the density, just to show you, because that's a reflection for most of our cities and towns in the UK. This is Perth city in Scotland. This is Perth in 1860, around 30,000 people. The average household size was around 6 or 7. That's maybe crowded with some shanty towns at that time. This is Perth, the same more or less in 1900, but suburbia started emerged beyond the city itself. 1930, they added only 5,000. As you can see, suburbia started destroying the productive agricultural land. 1950, 70, 80, and 2022 now. Wow. Perth is around 48,000. You added only 18,000 people. Look at the footprint of the houses. Look at the footprint of the houses, and the average house size is only 2.1. So 23 homes, that's 450 people. That's what we should aspire to. And the questions to me and to the council, if they are planning to add 10,000 people in the next 10 years, where those 10,000 should go? Bear in mind, this is all very productive soil and agriculture land. And this is what Richard Rogers asked us to do. This, the importance of focusing density alongside the transit system of reliable and relevant public transportation. Density is not about living in flat. Density doesn't mean all the place has to be of the same height. Density is about diversifying what you offer, including bungalow, including those who would like to have a car. That's absolutely, you care for all and you cater for all. And I like this. This is how density should work. Density and diversity plus correlation with proximity is really so important. So the right mixing matter most in terms of the mixing of activities, mixing of housing tenure and types, and also a link with the transportation and proximity. I would like just to finish with this. What happened in rural area? That's quite an interesting one. Working with my colleagues, if I may say, in Denmark, they created a new concept in rural villages. They call it networked rural villages. Can we bring different villages, especially in rural area where you have a very low, very few people live here and there, like they are small satellite villages. Can we bring them together and clustering them so they start creating shared economy, circular economy? And we tested that in a different rural context in Scotland, and we noticed To do so, you need to have a different approach to infrastructure and connectivity. But absolutely, there is a big opportunity that each of those clusters, they may support each other, because each one of them, they have their own local assets. Some they have their own nurse or pool or pub or market or school or post office. So can we create what we call it network villages, or what I call it sometimes villages cluster? And by the way, this concept has been even tested already by the Velo City concept as well, between Cambridge and Oxford. Mobility hub to me is key in this case to make this concept. Mobility hub is really absolutely key, and I know now there is now trends to encourage more the mobility hub, which bring those small satellite villages together and linked, so the mobility hub become the center to link those different villages. My conclusion, and this is the 10 takeaways, it's quite important to recognize what is the benefit of 20 minutes neighborhood. Is it a new word? And by the way, I really don't care whether you call it 20 minutes neighborhood or not. In fact, the Scottish government moving away from the concept a bit, they promote more enjoy living locally. Enjoy living locally, local living, or successful local living. The second one, it's not about architecture or only planning. We need to have this integrated approach, and bringing the market and transforming the market is so important, especially when it's come to density. The importance of how can we plan for more mixed use rather than single housing delivery. Remain committed to it. It will take time. It will take 10 to 20 years to transform the market, to transform the community, to transform sometimes the politics. Raising awareness is so important. And the language we use with the public is at the heart of it. Listen to the locals in terms of what is their needs and demands and their priorities, because often you will see they have a different set of priorities comparing with us as a professional. Winning public transport, public support is at the heart of it. And don't please assume universal applicability. That's really so important. And stay committed, the work never done. And also, I think we do need to adopt different approach in rural areas. So this is require not only interdisciplinary, this require what I will call it multidisciplinary. It needs to build a trust between the top down and bottom up, but also the middle in and middle out, where we as a professional may facilitate that's the relationship between the top down and bottom up. Thank you.